Hello friends, I welcome you all to this online session of BA Part 3 Special English subject Understanding Poetry. In the last few sessions we were discussing Victorian poetry, Victorian age we were discussing. In the last session we discussed about literary tendencies of a Victorian age. So let us continue with literary tendencies of a Victorian age. In the last session, we were discussing about significant characters that are larger than life and they influences the literature. Even today, you can see that Dracula is a very famous evil character that even influences many of inspired many of the Hollywood movies. So let us continue the same. So all the great writers and literature of Victorian age had three general characteristics concerned with human progress. See, the works were realistic, mainly concerned with the practical problems and solutions. So this is, as I told you, this is a period of a realism. We were moving from romanticism to realism. And as we were departing from romanticism or accepting or affiliating ourselves to the realism, we were also expressing the reality in the literature. The novel, which is one of the very significant genre of the period, marked as a realism, marked as a realistic picturization of the contemporary life. So this is also a general tendency in a Victorian poetry that or Victorian literature that realistic expressions of the works were realistic, mainly concerned with the practical problems and solution. They address the social issues, they address the philosophical issues, they address the moral issues in the contemporary society. So the Victorian literature moved away from the strict principle of arts for the art's sake. So in romantic period you can see, or before Victorian poetry, you can see art for art's sake. But this principle is rejected by the Victorians, and they adopt or accept art for moral or life sake. So they were interested in moral or the life individual instead of a art for art's sake. So this is what the shift in this is what the tendency that is accepted by the Victorians. So most of the novels, most of the poetry, most of the drama, you can see they were teaching you something, teaching you a moral lesson. When after completing a novel, you will get a moral lesson. So this is what is the tendency of a Victorian literature. Despite great economic, scientific, and social revolutions, this was more like the age of pessimism and confusion. So, as I told you in the last session, also I referred this pessimism and confusion. So, this is the period of scientific innovations, and the age-old religious beliefs were deconstructed, and they were substituted with a new scientific methodology of a thought. So this adaptation of a new scientific methodology and rejection of a religious belief creates a pessimism among the Victorian society, and also a confusion about the nature of truth or nature of a knowledge. So this is, and therefore it is marked as a tendency of depicting pessimism and confusion. So even in many of a poetry, this pessimism and confusion emerge as a major theme of the poem. In general, the Victorian age literature characterizes practical or materialistic life, but portrays a completely ideal life. As I told you, this is the period of a transition. We were moving from romanticism to realism, and as a result of that, though they were depicting the materialistic real life, they were also ideal in depicting, or they were very much thinking or considering the terms of a ideal life. So the idealism like justice, truth, love, brotherhood were emphasized equally by the poets, essayists, and the novelists of the age. So these are the literary themes or thematic concerns of the Victorian literature. They speak for justice, they speak for truth, they speak for love, brotherhood. They emphasizes all these values, all these morals, and try to explore the real life. So this is what they want to be, a torch bearer for the society. They want to show them a way to get through the amiable or hostile universe. See, the significant Victorian novelist. We are not supposed to deal with Victorian novels because this is a paper of a poetry. We will generally understand the names of the, or we will only go through the names of the Victorian novelists. See, Charles Dickens, Tale of Two Cities is a very significant novel by Charles Dickens. There is a very famous quote of uh, there is a good time, it is a good time, it is a bad time. If it is possible for you, read that quote by Charles Dickens from Tale of a Two City. It started with the sentence. Then the Bronte sister, Jane Eyre, and all other novels are very significant. Lewis Carroll, Joseph Conrad, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle produces a very popular series of a detective fiction. Then Oscar Wilde, Edward Bulwer Lytton, Wilkie Collins, Benjamin Disraeli, George Eliot, George Meredith, Elizabeth Gaskell, George Gissing, Jeffries, Thomas Hardy, Rudyard Kipling, Robert Louis Stevenson, Bram Stoker, Dracula, author of a Dracula, Philip Meadows Taylor, William Thackeray, Anthony Trollope, and George MacDonald. All these are the significant Victorian novelists. You can see all these Charles Dickens or Benjamin Disraeli. You can see they not only write in that particular Victorian period, but they also influences the art of novel even in modern and postmodern period, and therefore they becomes a, in real sense, a torch bearer for the genre novel. Then the significant Victorian poets. Yes, we are supposed to learn this. The significant Victorian poets including Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Matthew Arnold, Christian Rossetti, A.E. Housman, Algernon Charles Swinburne, and G.H. Hopkins. So these are the significant Victorian poets. I will repeat the same because you are supposed to recognize the Victorian poets in the examination. So there may be a question, multiple choice question, that who among the following is not a Victorian poet, or who among the following is a Victorian poet. Such kind of question may be in examination. So let us read again. Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Matthew Arnold, Christina Rossetti, A.E. Housman, Algernon Charles Swinburne, and G.H. Hopkins. These are the significant Victorian uh, poets. Charles Dickens was one of the English novelists who used his writings as a means to protect the weak people of the Victorian age and citizens the societal structure of the time, and criticizes the societal structure of the time. Yes, of course, Charles Dickens novels are very significant one. We read it again and again. I told you that Tale of Two Cities. You can see, if you read it once, you can you can understand that how significant Charles Dickens is even in a contemporary world. He was successful in contributing to several important social reforms in the future. So this is a very good example that how literature can work as a torch bearer for the society. This work of a Charles Dickens also successfully contribute into in imparting the social reform in the future. So this is a very significant sentence here. His social consciousness led to the writing of some of the most influential piece of Victorian age literature, such as The Great Expectations, The Pickwick Papers, Oliver Twist, etc. At least go online and read the summary of these novels. Great Expectation. If you go to online and write Great Expectation, uh, its plot, summary, and characters characters. You will get it on even Wikipedia. So at least read summary of these novels. You will understand the literary tendency of a Victorian period. So Dickens was about able to shower light on serious social issues which even the government failed to see. So this is what a potential of a Dickens in this, or you can see a contribution of a Dickens in the uh, to the Victorian society. His works strongly influenced the people to think that something had to be done to reduce the social evils of that new industrialization era. Of course, yes, something had to be done. So this need is marked, this need is focused, emphasized by Charles Dickens through his writing, through his novel, through his literature. So he tried to uh, attract attention of the common public towards the reduction of the social evil, that is the offshoot, that is the direct offshoot of a new industrialization. Then Thomas Hardy is another significant novelist. She was one of the novelists of the Victorian era to write realistic novels with a commanding emotions. His new style of a pessimistic writing was highly criticized. As I told you, this is the era of a pessimism and confusion. So this Thomas Hardy also write about a pessimistic writing he undertook. So Thomas Hardy, Tale of a Two on a Tower, and many of Thomas Tales of a D'Urberville or Far from Maddening Crowd. All these are very famous work of a Thomas Hardy. So he's introduced a slightly satiric or very tragic characters with powerful and intense emotions. For example, Sons and Lovers. You can see, if you are interested, you can go online and read Sons and Lovers summary. You can understand that how emotional a writer can write. So he is a social critic who portrays the low standards of life that the poor lived during this period of industrial revolution. So he is a critic of the society who points out, who emphasizes the evils of the society. He focuses the life of the outskirt of the metropolitan cities or urban establishments, and focusing on the lives of the protagonists who were living a very pathetic life due to or as a result of industrial era. This mix of realism and social criticism was the reason why Thomas Hardy was one of the most influential authors of the Victorian age. And he is not only influential in the Victorian age, but he is also influenced in a modern and postmodern period. Then George Eliot was also an author who used the literature to entertain and to portray the social conditions. Mary Ann Evans, who wrote under the pen name George Eliot, used her works to show how the social environment affected the characters. So understand all these things, George Eliot, or even Thomas Hardy or Charles Dickens, they were writing for the society's sake. So, and this is the general tendency of the Victorian literature. When we were reading Victorian poetry, you will understand that most of the poets were concerned about the society. They were speaking about the real social problem. They were addressing the moral problem of the age. So this is what a general tendency of a Victorian poetry. So Eliot believed that any work should be based on the real life, like The Meal on the Floss. This is also a very famous novel. It is also converted into a film. You can even watch the trailer of this Meal on the Floss. Was based on the real life experiences of being rejected by her friends and family for her marriage. So this is what you can see, the focus of Victorian literature is on a society, is on an individual. The protagonist or even the villains becomes very famous in this particular period. And when we think in terms of a Victorian poetry, you can see that such a kind of literary tendencies were also depicted in a poetry. Pessimistic writing, romantic writing, or even the writing about the moral problem is depicted, are the certain thematic concern of a Victorian poetry. So this is what you can see. You can also try your hand in writing these answers of these questions. uh, what was the cause and consequences of a rapid economic growth in Victorian age? We have discussed this in detail in this particular text. Then what are the different sects of Christianity seen in Victorian age? You can also Google it if it is possible for us. So we will summarize it. See, in the Victorian age, the literature transformed from romantic to realistic style. The language, theme, content, diction, poetic devices, and analogies were unique. And as a result of that, they formed a kind of literary corpus that can be used as a torch bearer in the upcoming age. Many poets, novelists, and dramatists of this age produced famous realist works which paved a way for the modern literature. So, as this is a transition period from romanticism to realism, there are several novelists, several dramatists, several poets who write to pave a way for a modern literature who is more realistic than the uh, romantic literature. The knowledge about the social, economic, political, religious tendencies gives the learner to understand background of literary tendencies of this age. As we discuss all these things in detail, the section gives a brief account of this section that we have already learned about the social, economic, political, and religious conditions and how it influenced the Victorian literature. You can also try your hands to writing answers of these questions. What were the social divisions and social subdivisions seen in the Victorian age? We discussed it. What is a bicameral legislature and the two major political parties in the Victorian age, Whigs and Tories? We discussed. So you can try your hand in writing the questions, answers of these questions. So we have completed the Victorian age. We discussed the social, cultural, economic, political, uh, uh, philosophical conditions of this age and try to understand the Victorian society. We also discussed in detail about the literary tendencies of a Victorian age. So in the next session, we will continue with understanding the major Victorian poets or the contributors of a or the major contributors of a Victorian poetry. We will stop here and continue the same in the next session. Thank you for listening.